Hey, good afternoon. My name is Danny Beissinger. I work for Molecular Products, and I'm going to talk to you today about Ortho-Para catalysis for hydrogen liquefaction. So before we talk about the actual Ortho-Para shift, I think we should take a step back and talk about liquefaction. You know, what is it? Why is it hard? And to start with that, we'll say the thing that probably most people know. Liquid hydrogen is really, really cold. So it's about 253 degrees below Celsius zero or 20 Kelvin. And for context, it's the second coldest liquefied gas in the known universe. The coldest one is helium. So it's really cold. Kind of moving on from that, you know, the process to liquefy hydrogen, to get it that cold, is very energy intensive. It's very hard. You walk around here, you look at the Linde process, air products, Plug Power's got their own stuff, Chart's got their own stuff. Liquefiers are hard, liquefiers are expensive, and they're very energy intensive. So just getting the hydrogen into a liquid state is quite hard. Now once you get it into that liquid state, you're going to want to go ahead and store it. And it's pretty hard to store liquid hydrogen and keep it as a liquid. So for that, you might see, you know, Chart's trailers driving down the road. For context, that trailer, not only was it expensive, but you see the trailer in the picture there, about 98% of the weight of that trailer is trailer, and 2% of the weight of that full trailer is hydrogen. So it's pretty difficult to make, pretty difficult to store. And finally, liquid hydrogen's pretty unique in the sense that if you get the quantum mechanical spin state the wrong way, you will also lose 18% of the product per day just inside that storage trailer. So kind of focusing on that last point, we're going to jump into talking about quantum mechanical spin states. A little bit scary, but really not too bad. Hydrogen's unique. You know, it's going to have a couple of different isomeric forms. It's going to have an ortho form and a para form. And you can see what those are on the picture on the right there. In that picture on the left, it's going to be ortho. So you've got the molecules, the protons kind of pointing up, right? And then on the right, it's going to be the para spin state. And that's when they're flipped. So keep in mind the ortho is a little bit higher energy, para is a little bit lower energy. Now both of these states exist in equilibrium as a direct function of temperature. So the ratio is temperature dependent. Now this is unique to hydrogen. It has to do with the hydrogen bond in between the two molecules, and you're not going to find it in another cryogenic liquid. You know, nitrogen will be different, LNG will be different. It's all not going to have this this ortho to para state. Now I said before that the ortho to para ratio is it's an equilibrium and it's temperature dependent, right? So if you look at the graph on the left here, that kind of shows you how much ortho and para will exist in equilibrium based on the temperature. So on the far right, you can see the temperature being, you know, warmer, and then on the left it'll be colder, and then on the y-axis there, you're looking at the percent ratio of each spin state. So about room temperature, you know, we'll have a 3-to-1 ratio, so 75% will be ortho and 25% will be para. As you progress colder, you're going to get more towards a para primarily dominant ratio than ortho. It coincidentally, 1-to-1 ratio happens right around the liquefaction temperature of nitrogen. So that's useful in other applications, but it's more coincidental than anything. The important thing here to realize is that without a catalyst, hydrogen doesn't want to quickly convert back into the para state. So if you don't catalyze the reaction and you just liquefy the gas, you'll have a 75% ortho ratio and a 25% para ratio, and it'll take maybe a month to have that conversion happen. And that conversion also is going to be pretty exothermic. But we're not going to talk about that for now. We're going to go back to that. I want to spend a little bit more time on the equilibrium concept. And for that, we talk about my friend Steve. So Steve, he's got a couple of different wardrobe options, right? And if it's warm weather outside, he's going to wear, some nice clothes. He'll have a hat, mojito, shorts. If he's going to a cold climate, he's going to wear a parka, snow pants, and he'll try to be comfortable. On the left, you can see Steve choosing how to change clothes. He might, go and change clothes after he goes outside. So he walks outside, he puts on a parka, and that's that. Or he could choose to do that wardrobe change inside. So he changes clothes inside, then he opens the door, then he walks outside. Now, either way, this is fine. Steve is a person, and we can all change clothes however we want, but nobody wants to be wearing warm clothes inside, and nobody wants to be wearing, like parkas outside. So equilibrium, it's whatever you want to go towards naturally. And for Steve, like I said, it doesn't matter how he gets there. But hydrogen is a little bit different. So on the left, this is very similar. On the left, we're going to see the ortho spin state, and then you drive the temperature down, so you go from ortho to liquefied ortho. And then on the right, you can see that we're doing it a little bit different. We're going to go ahead and catalyze the reaction. So on the progression towards a liquefied hydrogen, you're going to shift to the para spin state. And what happens then is that you do that flip before you're in the liquid state. For Steve, it didn't matter, but for hydrogen, totally different. The amount of heat generated in that spin state conversion is enough to drive almost 18% of the product back into a gaseous state. So if you imagine like you're in a well-insulated dewar in a trailer or in a fuel tank or a static storage, whatever, your tank is perfect, right? There's no insulation losses. You're still going to lose 18% per day of the product to boil off. You can't change it because it's self-heating itself every time it goes through that equilibrium shift. Now, if you catalyze that reaction, it's significantly different. You get the heat out in a different point in the liquefaction process. You get it out when the product's still a gas. You usually put it in a heat exchanger. And you can take that conversion loss from 18% per day to less than 1% per day. It pretty much is such a big difference that you'll never see anybody in the industry who is liquefying hydrogen without using a catalytic conversion process. Just doesn't make sense. So this is kind of a small slide, but we can share more information if you come over to the booth later. But where do you put the catalyst? We talked about needing to install it inside the process. Well, this is a cold box. If you're familiar with what a cold box looks like, you're going to have a feed of pure hydrogen, then you'll have some type of compressor, then you'll have some heat exchangers to stepwise get the temperature down, and then you'll have a turbo expander, then you'll have a holding tank, right? So in the middle there where you see that red line, the red little circle, we'll generally put the catalyst directly in between the fins of the heat exchangers. You can do it that way. You could also put that catalyst in standalone vessels after each heat exchanger, but you go probably down to 80K, 60, 40, 20. Each step, you're going to pass the catalyst, or pass the hydrogen through the catalyst and get some more conversion. And the ideal situation, if you look at all the specs from the different liquefaction processes, people are shooting for about 95% conversion of hydrogen to be para, and 5% or less being ortho. So in summary, liquid hydrogen is very efficient. It's 800 times more efficient, more energy dense than compressed hydrogen. So it's really ideal for using for mobility for different sectors in transportation. The Ortho-Para conversion challenge is unique to hydrogen. Uncatalyzed liquid hydrogen is going to lose about 18% per day just to boil off. And then if you install an Ortho-Para catalyst, somewhere in that liquefaction process, you can take that boil off and drop it down to less than 1%. Questions?
My name is Manu Chopra, and my question is, can hydrogen boil like underwater when it gets warm, or when it like when you use like something in the kitchen and you turn the stove on and off, and how does the bubbles evaporate?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So hydrogen is just like water or any other gas. There's going to be a point where it turns into liquid, and then you boil water. If you get it hot enough, it's going to turn back into a gas and just kind of go into the atmosphere, right? So for hydrogen, the moment we get above minus 253 degrees Celsius, it will turn into a gas and then boil away, and then you lose that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Dalton, please.
Hi, Danny. My name's Dalton. I was curious about the influence of pressure on the catalytic conversion, in that is it more favorable to do the conversion in a pressurized stream or at ambient?
So I think that's a good question. That's something that we are looking into. It's always challenging to get that type of data because it's typically going to be pretty unique to the actual processes within the liquefiers. So I don't always share that data. In general, most of our data has been collected at typical pressures of liquid hydrogen. So that's right around 8 bar. I don't know how much more pressure will matter. I know there's some processes with Linde, they're looking at putting some back pressure on a kind of a sub-chilled liquefied hydrogen so it can be more efficient in filling. We don't think it matters very much at this point.
Thanks, Danny.
You got 1 minute. I like those.
Hi, I'm Andrea. Just curious, what is the active metal of this catalyst, if it's a metal, and how does it deactivate over time? Like, are you expecting super long lifetime, which, as far as I recall, was the case at one point, right? Or how is this different from previous technologies?
So the catalyst itself, and again, there's Ortho-Para just talks about the mechanism of shifting the bond in the hydrogen. So the way we do that is with anhydrous ferrous oxide, which the STS might say is just rust, but it's not rust. It's a very specific crystalline structure that is pretty hard to make, but the primary metal that is used is a derivative of iron. Second question, oh yeah, how do you poison it? It's pretty robust. I mean, honestly, it's relatively robust compared to PGM metals or other type of catalysis. Moisture is not good. Moisture will clog the active sites, and that's why we would always recommend a very intentional activation method, which involves heat ramping and holding it up there. But we have installations that are more than 10 years old, and when we test catalyst that's been in our lab for more than 10 years, the performance is quite similar. So we expect it to last a long time. You could poison it.
Thank you. Yeah.
But it's pretty robust. All right. Thanks, everybody. We're just across the hall if you want to come see us at booth B52.